My name is Michelle, and I want to welcome everybody, and this is
Amaris, an organizer with Rise Up for Abortion Rights. Welcome.
Yeah. So we're here in front of St. Patrick's Cathedral, and we're out here with Rise Up for Abortion Rights. And we're here because we refuse to let the U.S. Supreme Court deny women's humanity and decimate their rights. And today, you're going to hear a speak out of different voices coming together from different parts of the country, because, hey, I'm coming here from Los Angeles, and other people coming from other parts of the country to tell their stories about why this basic right to abortion needs to be defended, and we have to fight so that the U.S. Supreme Court is not just able to get this right, which as we speak, they're deciding, and it's looking more and more like they're gonna rip this right away.
Go ahead. Hey everybody. So I want to echo the warm welcome of Michelle and also give a couple more points about symbolically and logistically what we're going to be doing today, how we're going to be spending the afternoon. If you are around, come closer, join us. There's some places to sit if you need to do that, but definitely stick around. It's going to be a very amazing program. First, we find ourselves outside of St. Patrick's Cathedral, and we're going to talk a lot more about why this particular place is so symbolic. It's actually the place of the first pro-choice protest in 1989. Today, you're going to be hearing from some people that were at that protest, including abortion providers. You're also going to be hearing accounts, as Michelle alluded to, of people who have been affected by abortion in some way or another, whether they were impacted directly or indirectly. And we want to, as Michelle said, draw particular attention to the Supreme Court decision that's upon us, right? And while we know that the direction of this looks like the overturning of Roe v. Wade, we're here to say no. We're here to put a stop to this, and we're here to say we're not okay with that direction. We're not looking for a world post Roe v. Wade, right? We're here to stop this, because if we don't stop this, we have a slogan that says forced motherhood is female enslavement. Just give me some claps or some snaps if you're with that. Forced motherhood is female enslavement. So we'll have some first-person testimonials. We'll also have some accounts that will be read by people who have volunteered to do so. And really, we want you to share your stories too, so there'll be opportunities for you. We'll share with you how to do that as well on your own time. This program is going to culminate in 6 really powerful stories, so we definitely urge you to stay to the full program. And these are the stories of women who have died. You'll see them to my right, while undergoing unsafe abortions. These are really powerful stories that are going to be read as a culminating part of the event and brought to the church. One last thing, today's protest is part of a string of protests, and hopefully these continue and you start your own. If you're listening to this from another city other than New York City, bring protests to your city. March 8th is a milestone. As people know, this is International Women's Day, and this crew, specifically Rise Up for Abortion Rights, is going to be coming together on March 8th at 3 p.m. in Union Square to declare we refuse to let the U.S. Supreme Court deny women's humanity and decimate their rights. Abortion on demand and without apology. Abortion on demand and without apology. So we're going to bring that story, or we're going to bring that sentiment to March 8th. We're going to pull that through today and definitely carry that same energy forward.
So March 8th, this is really important. We're calling for mass protests in the streets, because this is how we change the situation where right now there's way too much silence and capitulation to the fact that they're getting ready to get rid of this fundamental right. When women don't have the right to abortion, they are nothing more than breeders of children, than property of men. And this is exactly why we are here today in front of St. Patrick's Cathedral. Because what this, not just this church, but the religion overall, how it trains women and people to think. It trained me in this way. I grew up in the Catholic Church. To think that my role in this world was to be a mother. And growing up in a domestic violence household where the church told my mother to return to her abuser and to return to her husband, and her place was at home with her husband and her children. This is the way that women are viewed, where this is their only role, and when abortion is taken away from women, they are trapped in this kind of situation. They're reduced to nothing more than breeders of children and property of men, and we refuse to live in a world where women are forced to breed children against their will. We refuse to live in a world where women are reduced to nothing more than baby-making machines. This is why we're out here today. And through the course of today, you're going to hear the stories of women who have lived what it's like to breed children against their will. Women who will tell what it's like to have an abortion, to seek abortion, to not want to carry through a pregnancy that they don't want. And inspire people that right now is the time to tell your stories. Right now is the time to speak out and to call on everybody you know to get into the streets and act. We are not just going to sit back and rely on some channels that have already proven time and time again that they ain't going to do nothing. We're going to get out in the streets and we're going to take inspiration from the women of Colombia, from the women of Mexico, from the women of Argentina. This is why we're wearing green today. To do what they did and change the situation. That needs to happen in this country. There needs to be the fury of women that is unleashed out into the streets and say no more. Forced motherhood is female enslavement. So I wanted to say that, and actually I want to open up the speak out because I have a story of my own. So, like I said, growing up in the Catholic Church, I was taught to think that abortion was a bad thing. I would see the images of the babies, right? Quote unquote, the fetuses. And in all that, the women were erased of that whole situation. And I was trained to think that women just had to be mothers. And my best friend came to me when I was 16 years old in an abusive relationship and said to me, help me get an abortion. And I said no. And I refused to help her because I was brainwashed to think that somehow she needed to stay in that abusive relationship and give birth to that child. And I refused to help her. And I didn't even think about what it was like for her to be living in a situation where she had to go back to an abusive partner and give birth to yet another child that she did not want. And I carried that guilt for a long time when I changed my ways of thinking and understood what an abortion actually is. And understood that without this basic right, women are reduced to nothing more than breeders of children. And their life and what they're going through just gets completely erased out of the situation. Because you're just thinking about this quote-unquote baby that has the potential to become alive, but it has to be that woman's choice, whether you're going to bring that child into this world or not. And once I came to that understanding, I cried, and I carried that guilt with me. But it was the Catholic Church that had me thinking in this way. And for the longest, I thought that it was my fault. My friend ended up having that child. But But for the longest, I carried that guilt, thinking I didn't help my friend when she came to me and asked for help. And I'm here today to tell that story, because that's an actual human being, and that concentrates the millions of women all over the country, all over the world, that go through something as traumatic as that and seek help. And when people are brainwashed in this kind of way to don't even understand what an abortion actually is, they refuse to help somebody so dear to them and make them go through something like giving birth against their will. And I want to say here publicly today, I've never said this publicly, but I'm saying it here today. 5 years ago, I had an abortion. And it was the most liberating thing I could have. I was not ready to be a mother, and I did it. And it should not be full of shame. People should be able to talk about their stories. But this concentrates. 1 in 4 women, everybody knows somebody that has had an abortion or has a story to tell. But the shame that is put on women to make them think that it is not okay to talk about something like that, something so simple. It is more traumatic to carry a child against your will than having an abortion. There's nothing traumatic about having an abortion. It's so simple. But the fact that right now is being debated out, it's infuriating and should tell you something about the kind of society that we live in. The role that they're trying to reduce women to be just breeders of children and property of men. And again, this is why we're out here. And I'm telling my story to call on you, listening at home here today. Tell your story and get out into the streets and inspire people to flood the streets on March 8th, International Women's Day, to walk out of school, to walk out of work, and to say, we refuse to let the U.S. Supreme Court deny women's humanity and decimate their rights. All right, so we're gonna keep going now. I'm gonna bring up Merle Hoffman, who is the founder and CEO of Choices Women's Medical Center, one of the first abortion clinics in the United States. Merle is an author and organizer of the first pro-choice civil disobedience at St. Patrick's Cathedral in 1989. Right here. And she is also an initiator for Rise Up for Abortion Rights. So give it up for Merle Hoffman.
What passion. Wonderful, wonderful. And you have called out one of the most dangerous enemies to women's freedom and women's rights, which is the fact that the enemy has outposts in our heads. Outposts in our heads. Guilt, shame, I'm not a good girl. 33 years ago, I stood here with the New York Pro-Choice Coalition and raised this hanger, this same hanger. And this is a symbol of only one of the things that women used when they didn't have access to legal and safe abortions, you see? And so many women died. I wrote about Becky Bell, who was behind me, one of the young girls. Now, why did I come here in 1989? The 80s were a terrible time. Clinics were bombed, invaded, harassed. Randall Terry led what was called Operation Rescue. This was a group of activists, anti-abortion activists. I called them terrorists. They would go into clinics, doctors' waiting rooms, priests and activists, and they would have concrete collars around their neck, concrete, and they would put chains there, and they would chain themselves to the floor. So it would take 2 to 3 hours for the police to free them. And while they were sitting there, they would scream at the patients, "You are killing your babies. You will not have your abortions today." Now, Cardinal O'Connor, who was seated at St. Patrick's Cathedral, invited Randall Terry to meet with him. And he supported him, and supported him publicly. And I was very, very angry. So I wrote to Cardinal O'Connor, communicated with his assistants Willing, and I said I and 5 faith leaders would like to sit down and meet with him and describe what these actions were doing to women. He refused to meet with me. Well, I don't like very much to be rejected, and I thought, I have to get this man's attention. So I, and some of the people that were actually with me on that day, and I'd like you to raise your hands, who the people who were here in 1989, please, and let's give them a round of applause. Because they're still fighting and they're still here, and it's 33 years later, and we came here to get his attention. And this was the first pro-choice civil disobedience where 9 people were arrested. 9 people were arrested. Well, I'm here today to get your attention. I want to get the attention of every woman and girl and every person of conscience in this country, because women's rights are in a far more critical state of emergency now, a far more critical state of emergency. I started one of the first abortion clinics, legal abortion clinics, in New York in 1971. This was 1971. A pioneer, and 51 years ago now, right? And abortion was legalized in New York 3 years before the Supreme Court. So this was in 1971. And I remember my first patient. Her name was Helen, and she came from New Jersey, because abortion was still illegal in New Jersey. So in 1971, I saw a patient from New Jersey. Now in 2002, I'm seeing patients for Texas. What's wrong with this picture? Okay, so this is the first patient. We're in an entirely new world, legal abortion, and I talked to her, and I stayed with her, and I held her hand during her procedure. And that for me was an epiphany, because it was the most powerful and vulnerable moment for her. And that was the catalyst. That was the catalyst that led me to commit my life to this struggle. That power, and abortion is about power and survival, and that's why it's so radically and strongly fought, okay, legal abortion. That power was so important for women to hold. And I've held the hands and heard the stories of thousands of women after her. So I stand here also for Helen. And I stand here as a person who was politicized by the Hyde Amendment in 1977. Right? Do we remember that? A congressman, Republican Congressman Henry Hyde, right? If I can't save the women, the babies, no, excuse me. He didn't care about women. If I can't save the babies of all women, I'll just save the babies of the poor. So he cut off Medicaid funding for poor women. These were my patients. These were women I saw every day. Poor women, minority women. And this is what he did. And we still have the Hyde Amendment now. Where was the outrage in 1977? Where is the outrage now? Where is the rage? And I stand here for my friends who were murdered. Dr. George Tiller, who was shot down on a Sunday morning in a church in Kansas, where he was a deacon. Dr. David Sleffian and Dr. David Gunn. And all the women and girls who have died and are still dying from botched illegal abortions. Let's have a moment of silence for them. Let's just think about them. So, you know, people ask me, they say, you know, Merle, you've been fighting this for more than half a century. Where are your troops? They always look and say, where are your troops? Like you said, 1 in 4 women will have abortions during their lifetime. Millions of women have had legal abortions. Millions of women have had legal abortions. What about their friends, their husbands, their partners, their lovers, their families? What a constituency. What a constituency. But all I hear is the sound of reverberating silence, silence. We must come out of the closet. I stand here as a woman who had an abortion when I was 32 years old because I did not want to be a mother at that time. I could have been. I was married. I had all of the supports, but I chose not to be a mother. And I stand here as a mother who adopted my little girl, okay? Because I was ready. It was late in my life, but I was ready. It was my choice. We must take the responsibility out of the closet. Own your lives, own your moral choices. Your body is your country, and your dreams are your own. Protect and defend them. If not you, if not me, then who? Who? And if not now, when?
All right, y'all, give it up for Merle once again. I just want to mention one quick thing, that at the end of the program, I mentioned these 6 women, the women who have died due to having unsafe botched abortions. Merle spoke to that. We're going to bring these women and their stories to the church. This will culminate, the end of the event will be a nonviolent civil disobedience that some people will choose to participate in. We ask that everybody stay and support that, but did want to mention that is also happening. Next up, I wanted to bring 2 people. First, we have Kia Corcoran, who is a playwright, activist, television writer, and novelist, most recently of Moon and the Mars. She's going to be reading a testimony titled An Amy Coney Barrett Nightmare. And then I'm going to introduce the next person. That person will be the next person up, Cinda. And Cinda Lawrence is a stage and film actor who's going to be reading the testimony of Phyllis Chesler, who's a writer, psychotherapist, and professor emerita of psychology and women's studies at the College of Staten Island, CUNY. So, Kia up first. Give it up.
Yes, I'm okay. Hello. So I'm reading a testimony of a woman. This is related to the safe haven laws. And in case you're confused about that, because I'm kind of confused about that, it has to do with the idea that if a woman abandons her baby, that there are no penalties, that it can be taken in to social services. So the first paragraph will clarify the reference to that. And again, these are the words, I'm reading the words of another woman. Amy Coney Barrett, in recent Supreme Court hearings leading to an upcoming decision that could well shred the right to abortion, put forth safe haven laws as a recipe that would take care of the concern about forced motherhood. Okay. I lived that recipe. I was barely 17, looking forward to going to college when I missed my period. My heart still races at the memory of the panic that gripped me. Maybe you can imagine the terror I felt. I wanted to have an abortion, but I had no idea where to look. I felt scared and desperate. In those days, the early 1960s, there was a lot of shame if you got knocked up, meaning getting pregnant when you were not married. And many in my situation rushed to get married. I didn't want to do that, but I was completely trapped by a fetus that continued to grow inside of me. I frantically tried to find a way to provoke a miscarriage. I tried many things, but I recoiled at doing what so many other desperate women and young girls did in these kinds of circumstances. Poking a sharp object up their vagina. I was too scared to do that. And I was also scared and devastated at the prospect of being forced to become a mother when I was just barely starting to take responsibility for myself. Week after week, I hoped for a miracle, but I did not miscarry, and the fetus kept growing inside of me. It didn't feel like there was a baby inside of me. I didn't feel a maternal bond to what was taking over my body. I could only feel anger and despair that I was being forced to endure this. The accepted morality in society at that time was that I should feel shame for having sex before I was married. And this did impact me. But what I most felt was how unjust it was that I was forced into such a horrible situation, giving me no choices that did not require that I become a mother against my will. This really hurt my sense of myself as a person. My parents were very disappointed when I told them, but fortunately for me, they did give me support, unlike many other young women faced in this situation. I eventually went to live in a home for unwed mothers, think about that name, until I gave birth. There, I shared this torture with many other young women. Many were younger than me, and all of us there to keep from facing the gossip and public shaming thrown at us. All of us were suffering personal anguish every single day. I can't forget the 11-year-old Mexican-American girl still playing with dolls, who undoubtedly was there as a result of incest or rape. I also remember the mentally challenged young woman who had clearly been raped and didn't really know what had happened to her. And I remember how all of us felt like we were doing time. I made arrangements to sign over the baby for adoption via the county social service agency. I felt this was the right decision for me. I was not callous to the fact that this baby was now a helpless human being at the mercy of a county agency. I worried that maybe the baby would not be adopted and would languish in some kind of orphanage or in perpetual foster care. For some, this anguish is understandably unimaginable. To this day, the scar of this experience has never left me. This happened almost 60 years ago, but over the years, sometimes at unexpected moments, I wonder, what happened to her? Did she survive? Did she end up in a safe environment? How did life treat her? I kept all this to myself.
Hello, thank you for coming, everyone. Today is for them. These are the words of Phyllis Chesler. I had my first abortion in 1959, 63 years ago. Of course, it was illegal, and it made me feel like a criminal and filled me with terror and shame. I thought the procedure would either kill me or that I'd be arrested and jailed. My life, as it knew it, would be over and ruined. I was 19 years old, and in my second year of college, I had finals to take. I had to do well, or I would lose my scholarship. I found Dr. Robert Spencer in Ashland, Pennsylvania. He was a principled abortion doctor in terrible times, and he was always suddenly leaving town one step ahead of the law. When I got there for my appointment, he was gone. I found someone else, a man who may not even have been a doctor. No anesthesia. Was this my punishment for having had sex, or was it simply cheaper and faster? No matter. I rushed back to school, took my test, and carried on with my life. My second abortion was in 1962, after I escaped from my husband in Afghanistan. Fortunately, I got out before I even knew I was pregnant. I had absolutely no regrets for either of them. Sometimes I realize that by now I could have had a 62-year-old child, be living a lesser life somewhere in poverty, and probably could never have helped lead a movement for women's rights, and definitely never have written any of my books. By 1968, I was helping women obtain illegal abortions in New York City. And by 1970, I was marching for women's rights. In 1989, I was right here at St. Patrick's Cathedral, together with my good friend, Merle Hoffman. As my friend, the late Flo Kennedy said, if men needed abortions, they would have made it a sacrament.
All right, so again, thank you for that powerful reading. And you're gonna hear stories from people that couldn't be here today, but send their stories. And again, if you have a story, we're gonna give you ways to send that in, to feed that in. But we're trying to keep our program, really tight, so we're gonna keep going. Again, for people that are passing by, stick around. This is a speak out. And we're calling on people to get out into the streets in protest. March 8th, International Women's Day. We refuse to let the U.S. Supreme Court deny women's humanity and decimate their rights. And here in New York City, 3 p.m. at Union Square, watching all across the country, call for your protest in your city. So I'm gonna bring up Lori Sokol, who is the Executive Director of Women's eNews, author of She Is Me, How Women Will Save the World, and an initiator of Rise Up for Abortion Rights. So give it up for Lori Sokol.
I brought my own fan club here. So I'm gonna do something a little different. I'm gonna speak to all of the people who don't support women's reproductive choice, or who are apathetic, all the people who are walking by, who don't have time to stop drinking their coffee or having their snacks back there, and everyone else who's going on with their day while the threat to women's lives are on the chopping block. Because these are people who feel that reproductive choice, right to abortion, doesn't affect them, right? They could either be women who no longer menstruate, so therefore they can't get pregnant. They can be parents who only have sons, so it doesn't affect them. They could be men who can never get pregnant, so they feel it doesn't affect them. They could be privileged, middle class and upper class people who will always have the money, even if they're living in a state where abortion becomes illegal if Roe is overturned. They can always send their pregnant daughter or sister on a plane, maybe even first class, right, to New York or some other state where abortion is legalized, so they feel it won't affect them. Well, to quote Dr. Anthony Fauci, I don't know how to explain to you why you should care about other people. But in case you still don't, these people still don't, because it doesn't affect them, and that's all they care about. Let me tell you how it could affect you, every single one of you. Roe did more than establish women's right to abortion. It solidified and expanded the constitutional right to privacy, which affects every American, whether they know it or not, all right? Included in that is right to contraception, procreation, marriage, family relations, child rearing, and intimacy, meaning sex, okay? Everybody, sex gets attention, including sex, okay? So let's take each of these one at a time, and I'm going to briefly explain how, if Roe is overturned, how it can lead to these fundamental rights also being overturned and thereby affecting every American regardless of gender, right, orientation, socioeconomic status, etc. Okay. The right to contraception and the right to procreate, that would be in jeopardy. Roe reaffirmed prior decisions protecting rights to contraception and to decide whether or not to bear a child. There are a lot fewer people who are against contraception. We know that. Men and women, okay. Roe influenced privacy principles in each of these areas, principles that could be undermined if the Supreme Court overturns Roe. So, again, contraceptives, certain fertility treatments, even interracial marriage could be turned back. These are all imperiled, and of course gay rights. And for people who say they don't know anyone who's gay, they do know someone who's gay. They just don't know that they know someone who's gay, okay? You get it, right. Also, the right to make decisions about how to rear one's children. That will be in jeopardy. Roe specifically relied on and strengthened the underlying principle that parenting is best when free from unwanted government intrusion. Now, who wants the government to intrude on when to become a parent? But this is what is jeopardized. Next, the right to maintain family relationships. How many of you knew that? That's also jeopardized. The Supreme Court specifically relied on Roe to hold that the state cannot interfere in the family life by preventing close relatives from living together. Could you imagine that you could not have your elderly parent live with you, or a sister, or a brother, or an adult child who may need your help? That could be jeopardized. The right to intimacy, and again, yes, I'm talking about sex here. Another private right that was profoundly influenced by Roe is the right to form intimate relationships and the related right for adults to engage in consensual sexual relations in private. Now, who wants the government in your bedroom? Anyone want the government in your bedroom? I don't think so. To be apathetic at this time, everyone needs to understand that every American is affected by overturning Roe. And last but not least, the right to personal control of medical treatment. The Supreme Court in 1990, influenced by Roe, extended the privacy right to include the ability to appoint a healthcare proxy and refuse unwanted medical treatment. Could you imagine being in a hospital and you don't have the right over your own medical treatment? People are living longer, right? I signed a proxy, a healthcare proxy for my mother who turned 90 a few weeks ago. And when she was admitted to the hospital, the first thing they asked me was, do you have a healthcare proxy? And I actually had it with me, accidentally. You need to have this. Or would you want a hospital dictating medical treatment for your elderly mother or father? And we're all living a lot longer, so this is going to affect everybody. So in closing, I want it to be said that any challenges to Roe threaten the protections for these most fundamental rights. And if Roe is overturned, it's like piecemeal and incrementally going to be applied to these other rights. And if you don't believe me, listen to one of the Supreme Court justices, Justice Clarence Thomas, who has already said that he is skeptical that there is a right to privacy, and has been swayed by the lack of an explicit reference to this right in the Constitution. So that's already happened. So I ask you, what will you tell the next generation about what you did when the fundamental rights of all Americans started to be dismantled? Please be with us. Thank you.
Give it up for Lori. I want to do a quick chant before our next speaker. It goes like this, ready? Not the church, not the state.
Not the church, not the state.
Women should decide our fate.
Women should decide our fate.
Not the church, not the state.
Not the church, not the state.
Women should decide our fate.
Women should decide our fate.
All right. Okay, so next up, very excited to bring up Jim Fouratt. I think there's a bus behind me. Jim is a founder of the Gay Liberation Front in New York City. He will testify about a friend who died of a botched illegal abortion and his experience with ACT UP, with its major protests and civil disobedience here at St. Patrick's Cathedral in 1989. It's a theme. Jim.
Thank you. I am so proud to be here as a man, as a gay man who has vested interest essentially in what happens at the Supreme Court. We have always, in the Gay Liberation Front and the progressive arm of the LGBT movement, supported a woman's right to choose. We even in 1969, in the early 70s, before it became legal to make a choice about your own body, we took women to safe abortionists in that underground that existed here in New York and other cities in this country to make sure that women could be safe and not butchered. I want to tell you about my own experience. First of all, that institution, the Catholic Church, and there are good priests and there are good nuns and there are good Catholics. I grew up with those kinds of people. They taught me how to think for myself. But this institution is more responsible for the oppression of women and for LGBT people than any other single institution in our history. That's why as an ACT UP, we came here, and yes, we went inside because people were dying, and a cardinal said, let's be nice to them and help them die. We wanted to help people live. We want women to have a free choice. In 1962, I was a young actor in New York studying in Lee Strasberg's professional classes. And I lived in a building in a 6th floor walk up, and I still live in a 6th floor walk up, a different one, on West 10th Street. And on the 3rd floor was this very exotic woman. She was a cabaret performer. She had jet black hair, and I used to go hear her at the Blue Angel on 8th Street. One morning she called me at 6:30 and she said, Jim, would you come down here right now? I went down. She still had an apartment with a bathtub in the kitchen. You have to be old enough like me to understand those days. I looked at her and it was full of red water. She said, you must go to the drugstore and get me maximum strength Kotex. Now, you have to understand what that meant to this young gay man. I was embarrassed. Those were women's things over there. But I did it. And I came back. And she was dead. dead because she had had a botched abortion over in what was the meat market at that time. And she had no choice. No choice. And from that moment on, I understood more today than then that the very same institutions, the Catholic Church, the Mormon Church, etc., all the religious fanatics that want to think they can control me, can control my choices about my body, made me affected by what had happened to her. And the book bannings today are just the beginning of what is going to happen to LGBT people. I have the right to control my body. Every woman has the right to control her body and make the choices. This is what we call unity. We all must stand together and fight this. Whatever differences we have, I'll go over in the corner and we can dialectically talk about them. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that really powerful story. So we're gonna keep this going. We're gonna bring up Lovette. Lovette passionately feels we have to fight to stop the attacks on abortion rights as well as fight to end all injustice. So I want everybody to give a huge welcome and round of applause to Lovette.
First, I wanted to thank everybody that came before me, because there was testimonies that hit me every time they spoke. As a black woman and a single mother of two, abortion without apology enabled me to send 2 girls to college. We need to be able to make our own choices. We are not incubators. I'm going to repeat, we are not incubators. Rise Up for Abortion Rights. When I saw the statement from Rise Up for Abortion Rights, I signed it and donated $50, which I couldn't afford to do, but I did it. I am asking you to donate today. We need money to have loudspeakers, as you see this here, costs money. We need money to get out the word, and this doesn't stop here. We need a lot more money to win this fight, because we can't win this fight, all across the country. You're gonna have women, where's that damn hanger? Okay.
Don't curse it. Keep talking, I'll find it.
We're gonna need to, if we don't stop and fight for this now, we're gonna need that hanger over and over and over again. And we have to stop this now. So I'm asking you to see these buckets. I'm asking you to put your money deep. And this sister here will tell you if you don't have cash on hand where you can apply for. I am pleading with you to do this today. This is important. And all these stories that came before me, it touched my heart. And you know, if we don't do it, then who is? Thank you.
So real quick, just where to donate, drop money in those buckets going around. Online, riseupforabortionrights.org. Cash App, the cash sign, rise up, the number 4, abortion. So go to online, Rise Up for Abortion Rights, and put money in that bucket right now. If you can't stop, but heard what she just said, drop money in that bucket.
All right, we are moving along. How's everybody feeling? Good, all right. Keep that energy. All right, so one quick thing I wanted to say before I bring the next person is we had legendary American feminist movement leader, Gloria Steinem, who couldn't make it today, but she did want to share her support, so I wanted to acknowledge her and her support of this program. And then up next, we have Sammy, who's going to share her own personal story about her abortion. She also participated here in 1989 in the first pro-choice civil disobedience. So give it up for Sammy.
I'll hold your bag.
Oh, yeah. Oops. Thank you. I had an illegal abortion in 1969. I come from a small town. I was in a small college. How could I find someone to perform an illegal abortion? There were networks, but I didn't know about them. One friend told me not to hurt myself. No pills, no bleach, no knitting needles, etc. I hadn't even known about self-abortions, but that really scared me. My friends found an old GP in a nearby town whose clientele had declined. I think he was an alcoholic. He kept me waiting until the last and told the receptionist she could leave. When he asked me when my last period was, I lied, so it wouldn't seem too late in the pregnancy, because I was afraid he wouldn't do it. I was lucky that he didn't demand any sexual favors or extra money. He did his thing with a cigarette hanging off of between his lips, and the ash kept getting longer and longer. I focused on it because I thought the ash was going to fall into my vagina. Sorry. For aftercare, he handed me a few tissues and said, "Put this in your panties." Nothing else. I went back to school and started running a high temperature. Every time I stood up, I whooshed blood. My roommates took me to a doctor who told me that I was stupid. My tubes were probably scarred and I would not be able to have a baby. All without an examination. And by the way, I have a lovely son, so who's stupid, Doc? Turns out I had the flu during a flu epidemic. When I returned home a week later, I was reading the morning paper, and there was my abortionist on page 3, charged with murder. He perforated a woman's uterus while helping her. That could have been me. That could have been me. No one should have to go through that, or worse, die for lack of a safe abortion care. In the late 1980s, I joined every coalition in New York City I could find to fight Operation Rescue, which, as Merle was saying, was trying to shut down clinics by having hundreds and hundreds of people block doorways. In 1989, I stood here with Merle Hoffman in front of St. Patrick's in civil disobedience. We posted our theses on the cathedral door. Later that year, I and 3 others disrupted the US Supreme Court. We were sentenced to 4 days in jail, and some people before I was speaking was asking me what case it was. It was not abortion related. We went in and we were seated, and the judges came in and seated, and no one was speaking yet. And then we stood up one at a time and made a little speech when the cops came and arrested us. So I just want to let you know that we didn't do anything bad to hurt, abortion. And here I am again at St. Pat's at age 73. The stakes are even higher today. Not only are women's lives in danger, if we let Roe v. Wade be reversed, how many other civil rights will go? Abortion on demand and without apology. Thank you.
All right, give it up for Sammy. That was very powerful, very bold. We just have 2 more accounts, like 2 more stories, and then we're going to do a procession followed by the nonviolent civil disobedience. So encourage everyone to stay, again, whether you are participating or supporting. All right, so with that, we have a very special guest that is visiting us from very far away, from Texas, and her name is Araceli Herrera. She is the founder of Domesticas Unidas, the Domestic Workers Alliance. She's flown here from San Antonio to testify about being denied an abortion after a brutal gang rape when she was a teenager. She's going to do her account in Spanish, and we are going to translate as we go along. So give her a warm welcome, please.
Ahí está bien.
Ahí está bien, ahí está bien.
¿Así? Todavía no empiezo y ya quiero llorar. Perdonen, no es para que digan pobre Araceli, es por el coraje, la frustración que he cargado por 60 años, porque esta es la segunda vez que digo mi historia.
So she says she's already starting and feeling like she's going to cry, but it's not so people can say poor Araceli. It's because of the fury and the rage with which that she feels when she thinks about her story.
I was a child. I was in the college. I try in English, but when I need help, I'm going to help. So I was in the college. I have dreams. I want to be a biologist, and I was very, very poor. My house was very poor. No floor, nothing. Just when rain, the drops came inside the house. But I have a dreams. I want to be biologist. We are 7 children in my house. My father only, he works, and my mother. But I made sacrifice. I was in the college. And sometimes I have to make it work. So together with other friends in my group, so I went to the apartment of one of him. They raped me. So it was horrible. They destroyed my life. They destroyed my life because I couldn't do anything until now. All the time I remember that trauma that happened to me. So, I don't know, I was pregnant. I follow in the school, a student, and with hope. Sometime I know I'm pregnant. I went to the office with the nurse. I tell him what happened to me. That guys from the school raped me. I need help because I can't have a child because I have very young, very poor. I can't have that kid because I can't. So they broke my dreams because they say, no, you can't. I say, why? Because no, the babies have protection. You don't have rights to do that. So I start my nightmare in my life. No more dreams. No more hope. I start to rodar.
To keep going?
To keep going with my kid. When my kid born, I was in the hospital for the poor people. I was 10 days because I don't say to my parents I was pregnant. It was very small because we are very poor. We don't have enough food. My kid do not grow up. He only has 2.5 pounds, very small. in a shoes box. I have my kid, so I don't say my parents. I go to the street. I go with my baby. I was in the streets, walking, thinking how with my child sleep, or how I'll be in somewhere. So I was sleeping on the streets with my child over boxes. So it was very hard to me. So I don't want to go back to my house because my parent was very violent. I think he's going to kill me because I was in the school. Sometimes I have to go back to my house, and I begging my father to receive me with my child. She was very angry with me. She hit me and my mother, but it was very hard. I tell in my last days ago, I said when I was pregnant, when I start to see my stomach grow, somebody in my colony saw me. I was pregnant, so she go upstairs and throw me a water over my body because I go to work. So I had to go to the work like that. And when I go to my family says, "Oh, ella es la fracasada."
They said she's the failure.
Y todos me decían cosas así. Y they said my kid, it was the son of the chiles.
The supposed joke was calling her son the son of the many dicks.
You know, I don't understand because I was very innocent. I don't know what they said. I don't know, they offend me because my son is not from, well, yes, he's from different Chiles because rape me. These men, so it was very hard to me. When I was suffering in the street with my kid and all my life until now, I said, where are the people who make the laws? Where are they? I want to hear, to help me, to lend me my rights, to lend me my choice, because in my situation, I can have a child. I can, but no, they don't know. They are machistas. They think they are good decisions with the laws, but no. They need to investigate if really it's good, that law. But now I am here telling for second time in my life, I would like to speak very good English, to tell you more things happened to me, to tell you what painful is to me to remember that time. When I remember that, it was very hard to me. This is the second time I cry. I tell my history. You don't know when the law is against the woman. When I saw my kid grow up and watching me and telling me, Mom, who is my dad? You know, I told, and that is stupid laws, and that's a stupid men who made the law, who don't think, and really, woman, we can't carry that. So how I said, my son, you are from different men. I don't know who is your daddy because I was raped. You know, and now I want to cry hard, because I am very angry. Because the law don't protect really the women. I have rights. I decide in my body. I decide if I have that child. I decide if I am in conditions to have that kid, because the woman
do not have condition don't have to have the baby, because it's my right, it's the rights of the woman. I'm sorry, but I am really angry with the politics who made that stupid laws. Sorry.
I just have to say, the courage, Araceli, the courage that it takes to come from San Antonio, Texas. She just got off a plane this morning and came straight to this rally and told her story. I interviewed her a few weeks ago, and she told her story, and it's been having an impact. Everybody that hears that story, what she's actually been through and going public and telling the world, this is what happens when women are denied the right to abortion, when they are forced to bring a child that they don't want into this world, being humiliated. You know, this thing about the failure as a woman, because this is the role of women. This is how they view that women's role has to be in this society. But I just wanted to acknowledge the amount of courage that it takes, and we appreciate it, and we love her for this. So I want to bring up, yes. So I'm going to bring up Sunsara Taylor, who is the final speaker of today's Speak Out. She's the co-host of the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show, follower of the revolutionary leader Bob Avakian, host and producer of We Only Want the World on WBAI and WPFW, and an initiator of Rise Up for Abortion Rights. So give it up for Sunsara Taylor.
All right, sisters and brothers, we have heard a lot of stories today. We have heard of women's lives mangled, of hopes crushed, and we have heard the truth of what it means when the state, driven by Christian fascist hatred of women, forces women to have children against their will, or drives them to desperate measures to avoid it. This is the truth. Forced motherhood is female enslavement. But we have also heard courage. And in just a few minutes, sisters and brothers, we are going to demonstrate our courage. We are going to see bravery. As people who are among us here today, put it on the line in nonviolent civil disobedience. Because we have come to understand that it is time to put it on the line. It is time to say enough. It is time to find our courage, and through doing so, to summon the courage of millions and millions of women across this society that they don't even yet know is burning within them, and the fury. And on March 8th, International Women's Day at 3 p.m. at Union Square in this city and all across the country in marches and protests nationwide, we are going to manifest this fury, this courage, and this power undeniably. Because this fascist program of control over women relies on us cowering in the silence that they heap on us. It relies on us hiding in the shadows of the shame that they illegitimately cast on women. They rely on us cringing in fear at the pain they inflict on us and the bigger pain they intend to bring down. And this silence, it plays into their hands. This silence has allowed them to advance this assault on abortion rights over decades with very little cost. And today, at this moment when Roe v. Wade, the right to abortion nationwide, hangs in the balance, we have to say the truth here. This silence is being aided and abetted by the so-called leaders of the so-called women's movement, who are telling you that you can do nothing but roll over and accept the obliteration of Roe v. Wade, either outright or in effect. They are telling you the best you can do is prepare for a post-Roe America and maybe help a few women travel to another state or teach a few women how to induce their own abortions and hopefully stay out of jail and out of the hospital. And maybe pass a few laws in a few local areas to protect us and let millions of women's lives be shattered and foreclosed. Whatever they call this, however they dress it up, this is capitulation. And the fact that this so-called women's movement and the people of this country did not flood the streets in fury, did not shut down every freeway, did not walk out of every school, did not bring this society to a halt when the state took away the right to abortion to 6 million women of childbearing age in Texas last September. This is shameful. This is shameful. And this stops now. This stops today. Because when we rise, when we dare, when we back it up with our bodies on the line and the God's forsaken truth, the God's honest truth, that we are right. Right is on our side, and they are wrong, and the shame belongs on them. When we put it on the line, we can summon a force and call forward a force that is a match for these fascist women haters, that is a match for these dark ages shame throwers, that is a match for these pompous patriarchal politicians who have no right to tell a woman what to do with her body and her life. This fury, this unbridled, unrestrained fury of millions and millions of women rising up and rebelling against thousands and thousands of years of tradition's chains. This fury is a force that can shake the whole society, and it can change the whole world. And that is what we aim to do. Yes, this is going to take a fight. And yes, it is going to take sacrifice. And yes, at times it's going to be scary. But I say, look at the women of Colombia. Look at the victory they won just in the last week. Yes, they fought by opening clinics. Yes, they fought in the legal arena for years. But what tipped the tide in that country where they won the decriminalization of abortion in a Catholic country, in a patriarchal repressive state, they won it. What tipped the tide is when they looked at the women of Argentina who are raising this green bandana and filling the streets with their fury relentlessly, courageously, in the face of sacrifice, and they won the right to abortion in the streets. And in Mexico, they decriminalized abortion by going into the streets. And in Colombia, when they went into the streets, they opened up that victory, and you saw their faces. Look at the pictures, the joy, the tears of relief, the joy that is the taste of a victory for the people. Something sweet that far too many people in this world have ever savored, but we intend to. This fury, that spirit is what needs to manifest on March 8th, International Women's Day. And we need to take this green bandana and wear it and spread it and tell people what they did and let them know that we too are strengthened and inspired by their struggle and carrying it forward here. So this is the path that we are opening up today. This is the path being carved by those who will put their bodies on the line in civil disobedience in just a few moments when I'm done speaking. And here, I want to read a quote. It's a quote that I've drawn inspiration from and returned to many times. It's a quote from the revolutionary leader Bob Avakian, who is also the architect of the new communism. And I want to acknowledge that there are many people here in this fight for abortion rights who are not fighting for the same revolution that B.A. Babavakian and myself are fighting for. But all of us are waging a fight for fundamental change, up against an oppressive state, up against a patriarchal church, up against the capitulation and passivity of all too many that should be on our sides. And this quote has application to what all of us are doing. And he says, quote, "I have several times noted the fact that for the advanced forces, for those who come to the forefront of the revolutionary struggle, there is a heavy weight to carry. It is demanding a lot of them to play this role, to be the ones to most steadfastly carry the revolutionary struggle along. But it is not too much to demand. In basketball, there are those players who are not only outstanding in general, but who specifically make the big plays at the crucial moments. These are the ones who want the ball when crunch time comes, when the whole game is on the line. They are the ones who love to go into the home court of their biggest rivals and rise to their greatest heights in the face of the other team and their howling, screaming fans. They are the ones who not only soar to great heights themselves, but in so doing, raise the level of their team as a whole. Why shouldn't the advanced forces of proletarian revolution, those who have the most profound interest in this revolution and the most profound desire for revolution, why shouldn't they be capable of this kind of greatness?" End quote. We here are capable of this kind of greatness. So for all of you who came here today, not decided to participate in civil disobedience, if you feel that stirring within you, if you feel moved to participate, I want you to know that it will matter. And I want to say that a life lived without ever putting it on the line for something that truly matters is not a life lived well. And for everyone, whether you take that particular step with us today or not, do not squander the truth and the courage you have seen here today. Do not squander the hopes that have been raised from all those tuning in, walking by, donating, and spreading the word who helped make this happen. And do not squander the strength of those who will be putting it on the line in nonviolent civil disobedience. Stand with them. Bear witness. Document it and put it on social media. Spread it everywhere. And soak up this courage. Let it fuel you. And then tonight, as soon as this event is over, whether it's right after you leave or later tonight, when you get out of jail, if you end up there, get on the phone and get on your text and get in touch with everybody you know, your family, your friends, your coworkers, your classmates, the people in your building and the strangers on the street, and you tell them that there is a movement standing up. You tell them there is a juggernaut coming for the lives of women. You tell them that they need to join us in the streets on March 8th, International Women's Day. And as part of this, you tell them this Wednesday they need to be at a mass meeting at 7 p.m. right here in New York City, and that you're going to be there too. And if you need to change your schedule, change your schedule, because we need to get together this Wednesday to honor those who do the civil disobedience, but more than that, to roll up our sleeves and get to work together to figure out how we're going to reach people across this city, the students on the campuses, the people in the arts, the medical professionals, the young people, and the people locked at the bottom of society, people and everywhere in between, to turn out and make this March 8th truly powerful. March 8th, International Women's Day. Now, International Women's Day, people should know this. This is a day when the struggle for the liberation of women all over the world is declared. And in the revolution that I am fighting for, women's liberation is completely bound up with the fight to emancipate all of humanity. And to make this real, this means this year, we must fight with all we've got for the right to abortion. So together, Let's make this International Women's Day 2020 the day that the fascists and the women haters began to get nervous, began to realize that those they have stepped on, those they have discounted, those they have disrespected, those they have treated as zeros, rose up and started to change the tide. Just like in Colombia, just like Argentina, just like in Mexico, and yes, through our struggle, let us also draw inspiration from the women of Poland who have fought relentlessly for abortion rights, and let us, through our fury and our defiance, send strength back to them that they might continue that fight unbroken until victory. And from there, March 8th, we will puncture the silence. We will wake up millions more, and then we will go to work together to do the hard but necessary and inspiring work to spark and spread and organize tens of thousands more and ultimately millions in a movement massive enough, righteous enough, defiant and relentless enough that we sweep across this country and make clear to the fascists on the Supreme Court and women haters everywhere that if they try to take this right away, their society will be prevented from functioning at all. No business as usual. It is up to us. This is within our grasp. Everyone here has a role to play, and from here forward, we are going to fight with all we've got. We are going to demand the Supreme Court not decimate women's rights and deny their humanity. We are going to fight and win abortion on demand and without apology. Thank you.
All right, give it up one more time for Sunsara. And for everybody who's participated, it took a lot of courage for people to step up, to share stories, people who volunteered and read other people's stories, abortion providers. We're gonna take now the names of these women who have died through unsafe, botched abortions, and we're gonna take a moment to recognize them. And then we're going to cross the street. We're going to be led by these smaller versions of signs across the street to the front of the church. So if everyone can follow along when we do that. First, we're going to start with the names, starting way out at the end with Captain. If you can raise your voice, raise your sign, and raise up the name of the person whose name is on the poster that you're holding. Go ahead. I'll say the name. If you could just turn the name towards me. All right, the first name, Savita Halapanavar, 2012. Say her name. Say her name. Say her name. Say her name. All right, let's bring the second sign up. Say the name. Say her name. Say her name. Say her name. Say her name. All right. Let's bring the third name up. Jerry Santoro, 1964. Say her name. Say her name. Say her name. Say her name. All right. The next name is Becky Bell, who passed away in 1988. Becky Bell, say her name. Say her name. Say her name. Say her name. And now we have Claire Duval, 1929, passed away. Claire Duval. Claire, say her name. 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 Okay. And finally, but certainly not the last name, right, that exists. These are 6 women that we've represented here in these posters. This is Pauline Shirley from 1964. Say her name. 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 And now if everyone can gather, we're going to follow a procession going that way, in that general direction, led by a sign. If you could raise your hand, the person that is leading the signs. All right? So those big signs, just follow the signs. And we're going to do some chants while we do it. Into the streets, March 8th. If you could...